Hello, this is Cole Hammerhan, and I can't see who is actually attending at the moment. What I see on my screen is that I'm sitting here on my own, but if there is anybody out there, would you like to just type in a message for me? Just give me your name and we can start to communicate and get this seminar underway. Good morning, Christopher. This is Cole. I think you are the only person here so far. You're contacting me from Nigeria, yeah, and oh, Felicia, good morning to you as well. And, um, and I have a blessing as well. So we've got a number of people starting to join us, and we can begin very shortly. Okay. So let's get started. Yeah. So the topic is B2B marketing in a pandemic economy. Now, this is something that in all my years in marketing for companies globally, I've never seen anything like this. You know, there's the terrible loss of life, the disruption to societies, and a big problem is that we will need to get economies back and working again, because that's what provides the livelihoods for people and provides taxation for the governments so we can run schools and hospitals and all the other things that we need as a society. So we have a problem here, and it's widely agreed upon that we are going to have quite a severe recession as a result of this pandemic. So what I want to do on this seminar is to explain to you something about surviving this recession. As a business-to-business organization, you're going to need to survive the recession. You're going to need to hopefully thrive and be successful in it. But that is going to require two things. First of all, it's going to require new thinking, a new way of thinking about how we market. And it's also going to require more skillful application of the tools and the principles of marketing. So that is what we're going to talk about. It should take about an hour, this particular seminar. So we will be putting together a program on this, which would be designed to help you to create a B2B marketing plan. We're educating you on that area and also using those tools and principles that are explained here. So that's something that will be on our website very shortly. And I hope that this will give you some idea of the value of that. So where are we? We're in a position here where we've got this COVID-19 and we're going to have to deal with it. So the topics I'm going to cover, first of all, what does this mean to B2B companies? what does COVID-19 mean to B2B companies? And how can we deliver a marketing response to it that is going to keep our companies going and make our companies successful? That's the first thing. The second thing is we need to reevaluate the market sectors that we're in at the moment and the direction we're going in, because all the things that we've been doing up to now in our economies aren't going to be the same. So we've got to make some very clear decisions as to which direction we're going to go in, starting now. So we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to point out to you some things here about really identifying and prioritizing the key success factors that we have to meet in each of the markets that we are going to be in. We can't really afford to get it wrong because there's going to be so much competition. So we've really got to understand not only which direction are we going in and which sectors are we going for, but also in those sectors that we do choose, we've got to fully understand what the key success factors are in those markets so that we can succeed in them. And then we've also got a challenge here because there will be a lot of competition out there, all trying to get a bigger and bigger share of a shrinking market. And so what it means is that we have to do things better in marketing so that we become the preferred supplier to our customers. There won't be many suppliers. What we want to try and get to is to be the preferred supplier with customers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then finally, what we're going to need to do to deal with this recession is we're going to have a formal plan where we create objectives and we have a clear marketing strategy, perhaps a different marketing strategy than the one we've had up to now. But this part 5 is going to be very important for you because you can't just do things as you did before. It's there's too much competition. It's easy to get things wrong, and it's not going to be a very forgiving business world if you get it wrong. So that's what we're going to be covering in this seminar. So let's take a look here at the situation. So what is the economic impact of COVID-19? Well, you see there the first thing is a quote by the International Monetary Fund saying the great lockdown will result in the biggest downturn since the Depression. Now that is serious. The GDP of many countries, and in fact maybe all countries, is going to fall. And a number of markets will tumble, and many of the markets that do survive will be smaller, and we're going to see some very challenging marketing, shall we say, factors that we've got to deal with, and especially the degree of competition. So some sectors are going to win. Yeah. Now, we can already see that some of the technology sectors are really doing well out of this. And what it means is, for example, many people now are working from home. We're able to go onto the internet. We're able to have these seminars and meetings and training. And what that means is that companies like ClickMeeting and Zoom and Microsoft and so on, they're doing well. But so are the companies who provide the chips that go into the equipment, like the laptops, into the speakers, into the other things. So there's certain areas of technology that are doing well. Medical at the moment in some of these sectors is really growing and will continue to grow after this recession. I think it will wake up governments to be more ready if another a virus hits us anytime in the coming years. So I think medical will be a growth area, diagnostics, artificial intelligence solutions, data security is another one. And still here, we've got this one of clean energy. The world is becoming more and more aware of the need for a clear environment for the future of mankind. So those areas, those sorts of areas will grow. Some will lose, and we can see already travel, for example, is declining. People aren't traveling on holidays or leisure. People aren't traveling for business, and so we will see that travel and associated industries will suffer. I learned this morning that Warren Buffett, the world's most famous investor, has taken all his investments out of companies like Boeing, and he's also taken investment out of his companies that supply components to the airline industry, to the airline manufacturers. So we can see business to business is going to be affected quite severely in some of these areas. Oil, we've seen the lowest prices for oil, negative prices, and so on. And the word is that that's not likely to change significantly in the near future, and especially it may never change as governments see that clean energy is more of a thing to invest in than oil, unfortunately, for the oil producing countries. So we're going to see challenges there and extended supply chains. So what may well happen is that many of the Western countries, like the US and Europe, the EU, and so on, many of those companies who are involved in those countries may say, we need to bring our supply chain closer to home. So a lot of the things that have been farmed out to Asia may come closer to home, components and equipment that companies need to produce their products. So we may see some losses and some gains there, some opportunities. Yeah. And some of these areas were already in trouble before the COVID-19 for other reasons as well. So we've got to take that into account. So that's the situation. And what we've got is, what I would ask you, if any of you would like to tell me what sectors, maybe one or two of the sectors you market to, and what do you think the impact of this COVID-19 economy is going to mean for your company? Has anybody got any thoughts on that? So do feel free to put a message in there if you want to point out that you're in a particular industry and how you view the impact of this. Interesting, at the effect of the pandemic on the mortgage industry. Now that is, I can only speak for what I know of in the UK, for example, and certainly mortgages, because more people are going to be unemployed, the people are far more careful with their money. So whereas they might have invested, they might have moved from one property to another. They're less likely to do that now because their jobs are uncertain. But we do see something else, which is in the commercial side, and that is that we may find that less office space is required because more people will continue to work from home. So we will see some changes there. The market for oil and gas, there will be some areas where there will be opportunity, but by and large, it's going to be a tough time for the oil industry going ahead. A big challenge, and this was even before the COVID-19, was that many companies and many investments are switching away from carbon-based energy, and they're looking at much more solar power, wind power, and alternative ways. So there are challenges there, but you know, we can try and recognize the challenges and try and find out where are the opportunities still, or do we need to move out of this and move into other areas? And that's what we're going to be talking about to some degree on this course. So anyway, let's move on. Thank you for those from each of you. You know, and what we've got to think about is whatever industry we're in, we're competing in or in, we have to think about what will happen to the total addressable market of those markets that we're selling into. Now, what this means is this. For example, let us say that your company is here and you have revenue of, say, 100 million. Now, you may be supplying to a market of B2B customers. And that market, all in all, the whole market that you are competing for may be, let's say, $1 billion. Over here, this market of business-to-business customers will be supplying into consumer markets. So that could be, this could be a phone manufacturer. Yeah, and the consumer market for them, yeah, will determine whether they are going to sell a lot or sell a little. And if they don't sell much, you don't sell much. So looking at this situation, we've got a consumer market here served by your customers in the B2B markets that you are in. And your B2B market is a certain size, you have a certain proportion of that market. You don't have all of that market. So let's say you've got 100 million of £1 billion potential market. It means you've got 10% market share. And of course, you've got competitors to consider here as well. Now look at this. Because of COVID-19 and other factors, but because of that, we now find more people, more consumers are unemployed or their jobs are uncertain. So fewer customers are going to buy the consumer products. Because they buy fewer consumer products, the B2B companies that you sell to have less of a market. And so we see that your total addressable market shrinks. So it's shrunk from 1 billion down to 500 million. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, you've got 10% of share of the market. Your revenue would go down from 100 million to 50 million. And so what are you going to do about this? Well, what you would have to do if you wanted to bring your revenue or keep your revenue at 100 million would be, you can't just have 10% of that market because it's shrunk. You now have to have 20% share of that market. So you've got to start increasing your market share. But the trouble is, down here you've got all your competitors, and they too are all going to try and increase their market share. So you've got a very competitive situation in a shrinking market. And that is why you've got to market much more carefully. You've got to think more about what you're doing, and you've got to apply the tools and the principles of marketing in a much more considered way if you want to be a company that survives in this situation. So I dare say a number of you are in that position at the moment. So somebody's asked me a question here I think it's Dr. Trollgate, yes. Um, Marketing, among other things, others, links buyers with sellers, with information being the key vehicle. How can I entrench foresight in choosing my segment of the market? Right, good point. What we're saying, I believe you're asking, is that how can I look at this and choose the right segment to be in this environment? So let's take a look at that. That's going to be something we're going to cover. So first of all, as I mentioned here, your total addressable market will probably shrink as a result of this. The competition is going to become more aggressive. And for you to achieve the previous revenue you had, you're probably going to have to increase your market share. The trouble as well is that business risk is going to increase here because some companies will not survive this. So investors are going to be very risk averse. They won't want to lend money, as they want to be very careful in the way that they lend money because they can't afford to get it wrong. So we've got a challenge there as well. Any money that we do spend on marketing has to be really spent wisely, and we've got to prove that we've gone through the right kind of thought processes and we have a clear plan so that we can justify that spend, that investment. Yeah. So we'll have to make choices here about where and how we're going to compete. And I think that is going to deal with your question there about how can I entrench foresight in choosing my segment. Okay, so to cap all this, to round all this up, you have to get it right because there isn't going to be much room for error. If you get it wrong, you're on a knife edge in this kind of economy. And so I'm going to give you some ideas on what you can do here to deal with that situation. Okay, so we have here, yeah, it's clear you're going to have to seriously evaluate how you're going to deal with that situation, and it won't be business as usual. That's what we know. So what will your business do in the market to deal with that situation? I wonder, has your company yet come up with ideas as to how you're going to approach the market? How many of you are in the process of doing that, coming up with ideas of what direction do we take in the market? How do we become preferred supplier? How do we increase our share? So are any of you doing that at the moment? Please type in if you're going through that stage at the moment. Some of you may have started it, others may not, maybe not yet started, but need to go back to their directors in the company and say, right, let's get the market direction sorted out. Okay. So this is reiterating it. To survive and win in this recession, you've got to have new thinking and more skillful application of the tools and principles of marketing. So let's look at some of the things that you can do. Now, the first thing that you should consider is you're going to have to reevaluate the sectors that you are competing in, and you have to define a new direction. So the customers that you've been targeting all this time may not now be the right ones to target. Those markets may not be attractive anymore. They may have become too competitive, or they may have shrunk too much. So you're going to have to make changes, and you've got to make some tough decisions. You might be in a number of different markets, but they're not all going to be equally important to you. And you may have to get out of some markets in order to invest more in some other markets to survive all of this and succeed. So you've got to have some way of deciding which markets and what should I do with these different markets. Should I build my market share? Should I just hold on in that segment? Should I harvest out of this? Should I take my money out of it and just make profit for a short period of time before we decline? Or should I get out of that market completely? Or should I go into completely new markets? These are the kind of decisions that you are going to have to make. Yeah? And bear in mind, in all of this, you might also be under pressure to reduce cost in your business. So you might have less of a budget, and it's now spread over maybe too many markets. So this is what we've got to consider. We've got to consider that if we have $1 to spend in market A, we cannot spend that same dollar in market B. So we've got to make decisions and we've got to prioritize. I'm going to show you how that can be done. I'll show you one of the tools to help you do it. Yeah. So this is what we might do. Stop competing maybe in some of the markets we're in, get out of them. Or we might build our market share in some of the markets we're in, concentrate more on those ones. Maybe we just decide to hold our share, not try and build our share, not lose share, but hold share in some other markets. Maybe we've got to harvest the profits we've already made in some markets and don't put any further investment in, just harvest the profits out of those markets. Or we might have to go for niches, smaller areas of the markets that we're in, where we can be a leader in that niche. Or of course, we may have to enter some new markets. So a lot of decisions, a lot of thinking to do. Let's think about how we can do this. The first thing you're going to need to do that is to work out how attractive each market is to your organization. So you've got to have a way of working out which are the attractive ones, which are less attractive. Then you're going to have to prioritize those markets in order of importance to you. Yes, so you've got to work out how attractive they are and then make decisions about that market is priority 1, this one is priority 2, this is priority 3, and so on. Yeah? And then once you've prioritized them, you then have to decide on what is the strategy I would apply in this market as opposed to that market. So you've got to create different strategies for them once you've made those decisions as to how attractive they are and how much of a priority they are to you. Is anyone having to do that at the moment? I'll ask you the question. At this moment, are any of you prioritizing the markets? So I'm looking at our people in the oil industry, and I think it's, I can't quite see the name here. It's Nandi Modi. You're in the steel industry and so on. Are you at the moment trying to prioritize different segments in your market? So I don't see anybody answering that question, but I would say to you that you will probably need to prioritize your markets moving ahead. It's one of the first things you'll have to do. So how are we going to do it? Let's look at how we can identify which are the attractive markets. Some of the markets that were attractive up to now will no longer be attractive for your company. So you have to make the decisions to get out or to harvest or to re-enter different markets. You have to make those decisions. So how do you do it? Well, you need to get together with your colleagues in your organization, and you've got to decide on which criteria you are going to use to measure the attractiveness of markets. So you might say, you and your colleagues might say, an important criteria for us will be the size of the market. When we're looking at markets, we will go, size of market is important for us, or the rate at which a market is growing is very important for us. Or we may say, we've got a big market here and it's growing, but maybe the extent of competition is something that we have to take into account. So it may be unattractive in terms of the degree of competition you have to meet. The other thing you might consider is how sensitive these different markets are to price. That might be important from your organization's point of view. So there's a number of different criteria. This is just a small list of them, but there are a number of criteria that you and your colleagues must decide to use. Which ones will you use? And when you agree that, then you can start to look at the different markets in terms of those criteria that are the ones that your company is going to use to judge market attractiveness. Is everyone clear on that? I can't hear you, obviously, but does that make sense to you? Okay, Blessing? Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure for other people there, yes. Yeah. Thank you. And Felicia, thank you. Good. Good. So that's one of the first things you've got to do. Work out the attractiveness by, first of all, deciding on the criteria you will use, and then making a judgment on the different markets that are available to you. Some of them you may be in already. Some of them might be markets that you're not in, but you're going to judge how attractive they are with a view to moving into them. Okay, so let's take a look at this. There's a model that you can use, and you can find this on the internet. It's been around for a number of years. It's called the GE matrix, and I've used this globally with companies for many years, and it really does help to judge market attractiveness. So GE matrix, that's one of the things that you're going to be looking at. Just to give you a very quick idea of that, it works like this. So let us say, for example, that you have looked at different market segments. All right, let's say, just for argument's sake, you have looked at 3 market segments. Now, you might be in these segments already, or maybe you're not in them. You might be saying, well, we're not in this segment, but I want to judge how attractive it is. So you would use your criteria that I mentioned in the last slide, and then you would judge whether market 1 was attractive. So if market 1 was low in terms of attractiveness, it would be down here. Market 2, this other segment, is of medium attractiveness, and market 3 is highly attractive. So if you were looking at markets in this way, you might say, yes, we'll go for market 3, but not necessarily, because you also need to consider not just how attractive the market is, but how capable you are of succeeding in that market. So even if a market is attractive, it might not be right for your organization because you may lack some of the capabilities that are needed to succeed in that market. Maybe you haven't got the right kind of skills, or your products aren't right for that market, or maybe your processes work in a different way, or you've got the wrong brand culture for dealing with that attractive market. So what I'm saying to you is that the market may be attractive, yeah, but you also have to take into account, do we have the business capabilities? So if we had a low level of capabilities, this might be an attractive market, but it would be foolish to go into it unless we built those capabilities. So we've either got to build our capabilities so that we are very capable of succeeding in that highly attractive market, or maybe we should stay out of that market. Even though it's attractive, we don't have the capabilities. But maybe our capabilities are high for this market that's of medium attractiveness. So this is the question we have to ask ourselves. How attractive is the market? And how good are our business capabilities to be able to compete successfully? So you could go into this really attractive market and fail miserably because you don't have the right products or skills and so on. Yeah. You also have to consider it this way. This, for example, we'll say this may be a market that you are already in. Now, because of COVID-19 and the economic impact, that market may no longer be attractive to your company. At one point, it might have been a highly attractive market, but now when you analyze it, it's not attractive. So you've got to make decisions. What do you do here? Do you stay in here for the moment, or do you get out of this immediately and start to go into a market where you perhaps have not been, but it's more attractive than this one? But you need funding to go in here. So do you take the money out of this market and put it into that one? Okay, so you've got to make these kind of decisions, and you have to prioritize those markets according to how attractive they are and how good your business capabilities are to be able to succeed in those areas. And once you've done that, you're then able to look at it and say, right, so what is my strategy to deal with this situation? So my strategy to deal here might be enter this market as quickly as I can. My strategy over here might be hold our market share here till the market improves. Our strategy down here might be let's divest, let's get out of that market. So we have different strategies depending on what we discover by looking at the market attractiveness and our business capabilities. So I hope you see how that model can work for you. Yeah, that's very important to consider that. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is even once you've prioritized your market, let's say you've prioritized market 2 or market 1, yeah, it's not good enough just to go into them because they're attractive and that you've got good capabilities. You have to do more than that. So you identify them and prioritize them, yeah? But you also have to identify and prioritize what we call the key success factors in the market. These are the things that you have to achieve in the market in order to succeed. So when you've prioritized your markets, you have to make sure that you fully understand the key success factors in those markets. Otherwise, you won't be doing the right things when you go into them. Okay? So once you've identified the market key success factors, you will then be able to create a marketing strategy to achieve them. And this is how it works. Okay? This will challenge some of the things you already know, I'm sure. So here we go. In any market that you are going into or that you are in, there are things called macro drivers and micro drivers. Now you might know these, some of you already know them. Sometimes these are called PESTEL, political factors, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors. These are what we call macro drivers. And you also have drivers like customers and competitors and different stakeholders who influence the market. So combined together, these macro and micro drivers affect markets. Now, they could affect the market in a positive way, or they could affect the market in a negative way. So we've got one down here called environmental. These are physical environmental factors, which could be hurricanes or tsunamis or earthquakes or global warming or a pandemic. So the global pandemic is one of the macro drivers. It's an environmental factor, and that is going to shrink many markets. Related to that is the fact that the economy is going to be impacted. So the economy will reduce people's wages, and therefore that reduces market size. Or the economy means there's less money to borrow, and so companies in this sector decide to cut back on their spending, and the market shrinks. So these factors drive your market and anyone else's. Okay? So when you have looked at markets and you say, these are the attractive ones and we think we could do well in here, don't go into them unless you understand the macro factors and micro factors that are driving those markets and what direction they are going to push that market into. Is the market going to become bigger, smaller, more competitive, more price sensitive? These factors will all influence that. So this is what you need to do. You identify the micro drivers and the macro drivers and micro drivers for the market that you are going to go into. So let's say, for example, you've chosen to go into, let me try and do this on here. I'll try and annotate this for you. So I'm going to choose this, right? Okay. So let's say over here, I'm going to, bear with me 1 second. Right. Okay. Let's say that you are looking at one of those markets. Yeah, you might say, I find this an attractive market and we've got the right capabilities, so we're going to go into this market. Well, don't go into it until you fully understand the macro drivers and the micro drivers affecting that market. Because those macro drivers and micro drivers will present threats to your business. So, for example, if one of the macro drivers is that the economy is becoming less buoyant, then that may mean that's a threat to you, because customers in that market may become more sensitive to price. Yeah. And a micro driver could be competition will be greater in this market. So that will mean too that there'll be more competitors and there'll be bigger price competition. So that's a threat to you. There could be some opportunities for you. So maybe one of the macro drivers is that the government, politicians, see this sector as being crucial to the future of the country. So that may mean that makes that market bigger for you. So you can have opportunities coming from the macro and micro drivers, or you can have threats coming from the macro and micro drivers. So it's really important that you understand what drivers they are and what impact they would have on your business if you went into that market. Would they be threats or would they be opportunities? And when you look at your list of threats and the list of opportunities, you would have to say to yourself, so what do we have to do in the market? What is it absolutely essential for us to do in the market in order to succeed? Not what do we have to do in our company, but what do we have to do in the market? And so you might say, well, one of the things, because of this price competition in the market, we have to prove, maybe we've got to prove and convince customers in that market that we have not just products, but solutions that will help those companies to be more successful, so that they don't concentrate on price. In the market, we may have to change people's perception to this. In the market, we may have to reposition ourselves around the fact that we are more environmentally friendly in what we do than our competitors are. So in the market, we would have to get people to understand that. So this is what I'm saying. We have to know the key success factors that we must meet in the market. And you can see here that they would be prioritized. Now you know where you're headed in the market. You would then look at it further and say, okay, so I know my market. You can see that up here. You know your market and what you've got to do to be successful. And then you look at where are we weak and where are we strong in being able to meet these key success factors, because that is the game. That's where we've got to win. And we might find we've got some weakness in our product lines or in our communications or in our skill sets or in our processes that we would need to improve. We would have to gain these capabilities we don't have for us to be able to meet the key success factors. So now it's the market that you're considering, not your company first, but what do you have to do to succeed in the market? And then what do you have to change within your company to be able to succeed in that market? So I hope you get that. It's a move away from what you call SWOT analysis. That looks at strengths and weaknesses first, and strengths and weaknesses are in your company. Opportunities and threats are in the market. So we've got to know the market first. So it doesn't make sense to use SWOT analysis. Turn it round. Look at the threats and the opportunities in the market. Work out the key success factors. Then look at the weaknesses and strengths that will help you or prevent you from meeting the key success factors. Yeah. So that's how it works. Okay. The market challenges lead to certain key success factors that you have to meet in the market. Okay? So I would urge you to do that. Use TOES analysis, not SWOT analysis, and identify those market key success factors. If you can understand these, it's a major step forward in deciding which segments you are going to go into and what you're going to have to achieve in that market. So now you're able to, having done that, you're able to say, well, okay, we know what we've got to do in market 1. We know what we've got to do in market 2, in market 3. Yeah. So you will clearly understand those things. And then when you do decide, or you know the key success factors and you're deciding to go into a market segment, remember this: there will be, as I mentioned earlier, increased competition in that segment. The competitors, they're going to try and get a larger share of the pie in that segment. So what's really important for you is winning the customer's preference, so they prefer you as a supplier to the other suppliers that are out there. So you want to try and become the preferred supplier. Okay? Now, if you just go and compete on price to become the preferred supplier, the chances are you go out of business because you make no margin, you make a loss. But what we've got to consider here, a really crucial point. Let's think about the customers. So your customers, they want you to be able to supply, or any suppliers, to supply superior value to them. Yeah, those customers, they want you to supply superior value. But that does not mean reducing your price. And I'll tell you why. Those customers, look at them. They may have their head in their hands saying, our market has shrunk, we got more competition, and so on. So your customers are in a difficult situation too. And they're more likely to work with suppliers who can help to get them out of that situation. So it could be that you can be better than the competitors at helping these customers to innovate more quickly so that they can win larger share of market. Or maybe you can help them to meet environmental standards so that they win business from their customers. Or maybe you can help them to reduce downtime in their manufacturing. So it's not just about going in and offering them lower prices. It's about helping them to succeed at what they are trying to achieve, because they are in difficulty as well. And they will want to partner more with suppliers who will help them to succeed at what they're trying to do. Not just the suppliers who've got the lowest prices. They can't afford to get this wrong either. Just like you, they can't afford to get it wrong. So they need to align themselves with the right suppliers. And you want to be seen as one of the right suppliers who can help them to succeed, not just a supplier who's going to provide products at a cheaper price without helping them to get to where they need to get to in their COVID market. Okay? So how do you do it? This is how you do it. So you want to become the preferred supplier and you want to protect your profit margin. So what you've got to do is understand what your customers value and be better than your competitors at delivering it. So you have to start here. You have to discover what customers value. And here's how you do it. So can I just ask you as a question, are you all clear with what I've said so far before I move into this area? So if you'd like to type in When he, yeah, okay. So yeah, Olatom Kobe, yeah, Kobo, yes, you're prioritizing and so on, and yes, Peter, yeah, good. Thank you for that. So I hope all of this is giving you ideas of how you can do this much better. So let's stick with it. We got a bit more to do. So you have to start here. Once you know the attractive markets, once you've prioritized your markets, once you know the key success factors in your market, you need to discover, and you've got to be better at providing that value than your competitors. Okay? And this is going to put you, this little model I'm going to do now is going to put you forevermore into a different thought process than you had previously. Okay? So, first we're going to identify the new challenges that your customers face. So let's think like the customers. What are the new challenges that they face in their market? Secondly, where do your customers have gaps in their capability to meet those challenges? So we're going to find out, where do the customers have challenges in their market, and where do they have gaps in their capability to meet those challenges? And then we're going to identify where we can be superior to the competitors at filling the gaps that are most important to the customers. So here we go with the model. Look at this. Let us say that this is a customer of the type that you would be marketing your products to. That customer, is focused not so much on suppliers. That customer is focused on their business succeeding. Now, their business won't succeed, the customer's business won't succeed unless they succeed in meeting the requirements of the market, meeting the requirements of their customers, and doing that better than their competitors. So when you think about the customer, you're thinking about, what is their world? How do they see things? Their challenges are what they are focused on. So their market would be changing, the economy in their market, the political factors in their market, the degree of competition in their market, the demands of their customers in their market. All of these things may be changing. And so your customer is very focused on these things here. And what they will do is they will try to understand what's going on and then work out, so what are the threats and the opportunities that are coming from my market, from my customers, from my competitors? They will work out what threats and what opportunities they face. And what they will try and do is then judge what are the key success factors that they need to meet out here in their market. So they will try and establish what are the key success factors that they have to meet in their market. Once they've done that, they will then be able to set some objectives, some business objectives, some strategic objectives for their business. And they will set out a strategy to achieve their objectives that is designed to help them to succeed in their market. Can you see that? So the strategy is adopted by all the different departments within their company, like manufacturing, R&D, HR, purchasing, and marketing, and so on. So that strategy is spread throughout their company in different departments. And there are all sorts of operational actions that take place in manufacturing, in HR, in purchasing, in R&D, to make this strategy work, to achieve those objectives, to meet those key success factors in the market. And so the company is carrying out lots of operational actions in different departments in order to achieve this. But they don't have all the capabilities they need to do it. So they will have gaps. They will have gaps in their capability to make this strategy work. They will have perhaps gaps in their knowledge, gaps in their processes, gaps in their product range, gaps in their just-in-time systems, gaps of all different kinds. So if we can understand what they're trying to achieve in the market and what their strategy is, we can then start to consider what are they trying to do within their company in the different departments, and where did they have gaps that would prevent them from doing that? And once we know these gaps, we should be approaching them with solutions to fill those gaps in capability that they've got. We should not be just providing them with product. Hey, I've got a great product. We should think differently. We need to think like the customers, identify their challenges, identify their gaps, and be proactive in coming forward with products and solutions that are going to be really meaningful to them, because they need to fill these gaps in order to make their strategy work, to achieve their objectives, to meet their key success factors in their market. So that is why we've got to think, and that's what we've got to explore. And if we can do this well, and I've done it with companies globally, where they have become the preferred partner to their supplier, to their customers, they become the preferred supplier to their customers by taking exactly this approach, and they have increased their market share and the share of spend that they get from their customers. So do this, yeah? Think more like this, okay? Think about your customer. Look beyond your customer to their market and their challenges. What do their customers demand of them? What are their competitors doing? How are they going to compete against those competitors? What does all this mean to them, to the customer, in terms of their key success factors, their objectives, their strategy, and the way they work and where they've got gaps? That's how we can become the preferred supplier. So when you've identified their important needs, that's the customer's important needs, think about how you can help them to succeed. Be better at helping them to succeed. Don't just provide them with products. Think, how can we make these customers more successful? How can we be better at that than our competitors? And then, with that knowledge and that thought process, you prioritize their needs of what they would find most valuable. And then you create a marketing mix which is going to enable you to meet their needs better than the competitors can. Yeah. So you're able to bring a superior offer to them. Yeah. It may not just be a product, it could be intangible things like assistance with planning, or helping them to innovate more quickly, or helping them to improve the quality of their own carbon footprint. There could be many things. Think about providing them with solutions that they value, and that's how you become a preferred partner. Now, the final thing I want to cover, and I hope you're still there. If you are, just signal to me that you're still here. This won't take very long, but it brings all of this together. So do send me a message if this is meeting your requirements and it's helping you to decide how to go forward from here. I see Felicia that you're typing in something here. Yes, thank you very much for that comment. Good job. And Temitope, I hope I got your name right. Yeah, same with you. Thank you for that reaffirmation that we're still, Nandi. Yeah, thank you as well. Now, let's go through this final piece, which is really important. So we've done all this work that I mentioned, looked at those different things. We looked at the market attractiveness, made decisions on prioritizing the markets and which ones to stay in or get out of. And we would then create a strategy for the market. Then we would look at the key success factors that we would have to meet in that market. And then we'd have to look at how can we be superior at adding value for the customers so that we become their preferred supplier in that market. And therefore, we get a larger share of the market than our competitors do, even though the market may be shrinking in this COVID-19 market environment. And finally, this is what we want to do. With that knowledge and that thought process, and that insight that we gain from the market by doing those things, we would then need to create a new marketing strategy. You can't muddle around and just say, let's do some communication here, let's tell them this, let's do that, let's make this product. To succeed in the future in this market, you must create a clear marketing strategy with a plan for delivering it. And you've got to communicate that to people in your company, and you've got to get their buy-in to do it. So you can't muddle around and hope that you're lucky. You've got to have a clear strategy, a clear plan, and this is how you can put that together. So it's just this one slide I'm going to show you on it, but it's a very telling slide. So this is how you would do it. So there's a process you go through to create this strategy and this marketing plan. So the first thing you should do is find out from your bosses, from your colleagues and so on, sorry about that, find out what are the corporate objectives now for the business, and what is the corporate strategy of the business. So you need to find that out as a marketing director, a marketing manager, or marketing executive. You need to find that out, the corporate objectives and corporate strategy, for a particular reason. When you put your marketing strategy together, and when you put your marketing plan together, it cannot move away from the intended corporate strategy. So you have to be aligned with the corporate strategy and the corporate objectives. So you must know what they are first. Then once you know them, you can then say, we're going to look at the situation outside our business, the situation in the market, because that will determine whether you succeed or not. So the kind of things I mentioned to you, like the market drivers, the customers, and the competitors, you need to look at those. You need to get that information together. And in particular, you need to get to a point where you know the key success factors for the market, and you need to prioritize them. Okay? So get to that position. Then you look inside your company at the capabilities that you've got. I'll just put C, capabilities. Your capabilities to enable you to meet those key success factors. So if you don't know what the key success factors are, you can't judge whether you've got the capabilities or not. And those capabilities have to be aligned so that they meet these key success factors. So you might have lots of capabilities that are just not right for meeting the key success factors. So that is why we do it in that order. We look at the external situation first, understand the market and what it needs, and then look internally to see if we can provide what it needs. And we might need to make changes to the skills we've got, maybe change our processes or maybe change our product portfolio in order to meet the key success factors in the market. Once we know both of those things, we would then be able to set some marketing objectives. What are we actually going to achieve in the market, knowing the corporate objectives and strategy so we don't move away from that, knowing what the market requires and knowing our capabilities, we can now set some smart objectives for marketing. When we've done that, we then work out what is the strategy that we are going to apply, what is the strategy that we're going to apply to meet those objectives. We'd also work out who are we going to target in the market. And bear this in mind, you may need to target different people now as a result of the COVID impact on the markets. You might need to get to different kinds of decision makers within the B2B companies that you didn't deal with before. Yeah. So you might have to target different kinds of people. And you've also, in your strategy, you've got to decide going ahead, how do we want to position our company in the minds of the customers and other stakeholders?
Look at attractiveness, understand the key success factors, create preference among the suppliers, and you need to create a strategy, a marketing strategy and plan to put all this together. And finally, we are putting together a course on this. It's called B2B Marketing in the COVID Economy, and we will be putting it up, I believe, online. And it will be a course where you would have 5 days with 4 hours a day and some initial support after the course to help you with your plans. So it is something that will be available, I believe. So watch out for that, and I'm sure that the team at Aztec, my colleagues at Aztec, will be notifying you of that. So thank you very much for attending. I hope this has been valuable to you, and stay healthy, stay well, and do try and apply these things and succeed for your organization and for your families. Thank you very much. Goodbye now.